Okay, I think we're live. Hey everyone, welcome to my regular Wednesday night live stream. Today I have Dr. Con Kafataris. Have I pronounced that correctly?
Yes, you have.
Good. What's that crunching in the background?
That's coming from your phone, I suppose. I don't know.
My phone? I'm not using a phone.
No. It's from your your end when you speak. So
Maybe
I
this?
don't know.
Okay, that's fine. All right, well, if you guys are like me and you're sick of hearing about the coronavirus, we're probably not really going to touch much on that today. We're going to talk about
No,
other
we're not.
things.
This is a corona-free zone.
Exactly. I believe that the world will go back to normal somewhat. I think this is an implementation of something. It is annoying, isn't it? Should I get rid of my microphone?
Try that.
Is that better? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I don't. Am I coming through crackling? I hope not.
No, you're not, but I am.
I'm not. You are. So
I am still coming through crackling. Hang on, let me just play with the mic. Oh no,
there's a crackle vibe.
Yeah, I just don't like it. I don't want it. No. It's still crackling. I can't change it. Alright, people are gonna have to put up with it. Sorry everyone. Alright, well I don't need that. Okay. So it's really annoying. I hate it. Okay. I believe that this it's really annoying, isn't it?
I don't know what to do.
Are you sure it's me?
Well, can you hear when is it crackling when I hear when I talk?
No.
So I don't know. So it only seems to crackle when you speak.
Maybe it's my horrible voice.
I don't know. Do you want me to? I don't have headphones or anything. Do you?
It's alright. I'll have to just suck it up. I don't know why it's doing that, but Dia has a cracking voice. I don't know what that means. Right? I don't know if they mean. I don't know if that's a joke or if it's my side that's the problem. But I don't know what to do. All right.
Well, you just ask lots of questions, and then I'll do most of the talking. And then there's less crackling. How's that?
Indeed. Well, this is a coronavirus-free zone. I do believe that life will get back to normal somewhat. I think that there'll always be some sort of differences that will be implemented. But anyway, so let's begin with I was just reading an article by the Sydney Morning Herald about you.
Oh, yes.
It says here, no one wants to be the next Folau. Christians, Muslims, and Jews join to champion religious freedom. So do you want to talk about that first? Because that seems to be the thing you were most enthusiastic to talk about. And I'll just stay quiet.
Okay. Well, maybe what would you like to know? Like, as in, what led to that Sydney Morning Herald? As long as someone's saying, ask Con to turn down his volume as low as he can. Okay. So I've turned my volume down. I don't know if that works better.
Okay. Blah 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 blah. Not so crackling.
Still crackling. Okay. Well, the Sydney Morning Herald, the Sydney Morning Herald article. Well,
it said.
Sorry.
You said a conservative Christian group that targeted godless Labor seats in the federal election has joined the Muslim, Jewish, and Scientologist groups to ensure no one becomes the next Israel Folau. So that's the purpose of the article. Go ahead.
Yes. Well, I'll give some context to how that came about. As you may sort of explore later, I was heavily involved with the No campaign during same-sex marriage, and I took that position not just purely because of my Christian beliefs, but because I'd looked at the evidence and the science, probably a lot more than a lot of other people I'd seen, and it led me to believe that redefining marriage wouldn't be the best thing for our society. Anyway, in that campaign, I met some people of like mind, and I met some people that were upset with their local members because they were in electorates that were heavily no voters. Some of them, nearly 70%, and the MP voted yes, and sort of celebrated it, for want of a better word, and they got really annoyed at it, and so. Through a series of circumstances, I met with those people, and not just that, but my research also told me that one of the big things that happens whenever, in every jurisdiction that's redefined marriage, pretty much everywhere around the world, religious freedom has been a casualty. Okay, particularly people who say no to same-sex marriage because of their religious convictions.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that was coming to Australia as well. And this was even before the Folau controversy, right? Folau and Margaret Court just confirmed what I knew was going to happen, because it's happened everywhere else. And so, I mean, you probably know about what happened in Houston a few years ago, where pastors were asked to subpoena, they were asked to hand in their sermons because the lesbian mayor of Houston wanted to introduce certain laws, and so and it's happened in you hear about the Christian bakers, Ash's Bakery. You hear
I
about
absolutely heard about that.
Yeah. So it's happened. It's happened in the UK. It's happened in Canada. It's happened in the US. So I knew it was going to come here. Anyway, these people. They also wanted, so on the one hand, they wanted to do something about religious freedom, but on the other hand, they also wanted to, I guess, make a statement to these MPs, particularly one of them, who basically, in their eyes, just told them to stick it, really. I mean, that's the way they took it. Because, when you've got 70% of your electorate voting one way, and you openly say, look, and it wasn't just that they voted, that this particular MP voted yes. He said, I voted yes even though I knew my electorates would vote no. And he said that in his speech in Hansard, right?
Oh, wow.
Anyway, that was, now, he may argue that he told people before the 2016 election he was going to take that position. Everybody in that electorate I've spoken to didn't know about it. So if he did say it, he didn't say it in, and these are parts of Sydney that don't speak English very well. So it's not like it was put in all the Arabic newspapers, for example. Okay. So anyway, what that context tells people that I got together with these people to start to look at, okay, how can we do something to make a statement? Now I realized that politicians only care about one thing. They only care about numbers and votes. You can jump up and down as much as you want. You can put out all the YouTube videos you want. You can do all that stuff. But if it doesn't translate to votes and hurt them at the ballot box, they're not going to listen to you, right? So we decided to do something about that. We decided to start to have public meetings in Western Sydney, where we would start to talk about religious freedom as an issue, and we brought in people like Mark Latham to one of them.
An atheist, well done.
Look, but to his credit, Mark Latham was one of the people speaking about religious freedom before it became trendy. Okay, and that's one of the reasons.
I know. I interviewed him too on the same subject.
Yeah, yeah. And so when I saw him speak about it, I asked him to speak. And this rally was in Fairfield, so sort of part of Wogtown, and I can say that with my last name. Okay,
are you sure you even have to justify yourself?
Sorry. No, I'm not politically correct. I get called a wog when I was at school, and so that's all right.
I like it.
Yeah, and it, what? It never bothered me. I was like, all right,
I don't like being called wog, even though I'm European. I don't like being called wog, not because I hate wogs, but because I'm Latin. And people go, yeah, but you're half European, you're half Spanish. I'm like, yeah, but without the Spanish, the Latinos, I'm still technically Latin.
Well,
not wogs, but wogs, okay.
My parents are from Cyprus, so I don't have that that issue.
Yeah.
So we're in the middle of Fairfield, and we're having this rally, and several hundred people show up. And Mark Latham starts to bag out the local member, you know, and he says, and one guy you should change is such and such, right? And everybody's clapping, right? And so we then we did another rally in Mount Druitt, and we had some people come along, and there was a lady that turned up who was a journalist with the Sydney Morning Herald.
And the article.
Yeah, and well, no, this was the follow-up article to the one she wrote. And the reason I think she wrote the article was because I made it very clear when we did the rallies that it was a religious freedom rally, and I actually invited people of other faiths to come. And one of the friends, one of the guys who helped me organize it, he knew some Shia Muslims, right? The Sunnis wouldn't come, but that's another story. That's an issue between them and Mark Latham. We can talk about that another time. But had some Shias come, and I got some flack from my own side saying, you know, oh, what are you? You're a Christian, and you want to empower Islam. And I said, listen, this isn't a Christian freedom rally. This is a religious freedom rally. I said, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. If if they're a recognized religion here, they have as much right to practice their faith under Australian law as we do. And if you don't like their faith, go and debate with them, okay, and discuss the theology openly with respect, and do the apologetic thing, right? So, because that Christian Muslim aspect of it got the media's attention, and then we had the Muslim leaders contact me after that. I ended up sitting with the president of the Imams Council, the National Imams Council, probably the most powerful Sunni group in the country, before the election. And then I spoke to 50 different Muslim leaders 2 days before the election. Okay. History will show that Labor suffered some big swings against it. And the biggest swings were the 2 seats where we did our rallies.
Fantastic.
And so one swing was nearly 8% against Labor. Okay. Another one was 6% against Labor. Now, where did those votes go? The majority of them didn't go to the Liberal Party. They went to One Nation. Now, think about it. You've got a group of people who come from predominantly Asia and the Middle East in those electorates, right? And yet they're voting for a party. Nearly 10,000 of them voted for a party whose leader said 3 decades ago that, we're in danger of being swamped by Asians, and 2 decades ago we're in danger of being swamped by Muslims. So why did they vote for her party? Because they thought that she would better protect their religious freedom than either of the 2 major parties.
But she hasn't.
Well, that's what they thought, right?
No,
But for those people in Western Sydney, their religion is everything, right? And so that led to another event we did in Fairfield last year, towards the end of the year, and that's where that article by Alex Smith came from, and the whole exposure draft from the federal government was being released, and by that time I'd been working with a multi-faith alliance. So I'm working now with leaders at the highest level, the Jewish faith, the Shia, Sunni, Catholic, Anglican, Baptist, Pentecostals.
Mormons? Any Mormons?
Mormons, we've reached out to them. I've sat down with Hindus. I've sat down with Hindus and Buddhists and Sikhs as well. At the event that the article was on, there was a Sikhs met come, and the Scientologists. The Scientologists have turned up as well. So and interestingly, they've been great supporters. So every event we have the Scientologists turn up, which is great.
So they're against gay marriage, Scientologists. Sorry? That's something I was aware of. Okay, Scientologists are against gay marriage?
I'm not sure if they were against gay marriage, but
they were against the religious. This is about the Religious Freedom Bill. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, many people weren't happy with the government's first draft Religious Freedom Bill, the exposure draft, the first one. I was one of those that wasn't happy. I don't think it goes far enough.
No, it doesn't.
And I understand what the government's trying to do, because in both major parties, they have a very strong left wing. Both the Labor Party has a strong left wing, and the Liberal Party has a strong left wing.
Right? Does.
Yeah, and so in effect, they're a two-headed monster. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to have a bet each way. They're trying to give us a shade of grey. But the problem is that you've got one group that wants black, for example, us. You've got the other group that wants white. So we want strong religious freedom laws. The Equality Campaign or our opposition doesn't want strong religious freedom laws because they think that we're going to use it to bash gay people, which we're not. Okay,
No.
but that's what that's what they're saying. So they're mutually exclusive. That's the thing. Now, this is the way I see it, and I've said this to the prime, not specifically to the prime. I've said it to the General Counsel of the Prime Minister. I've said it to the Attorney, the Shadow Attorney General. I've spoken this to the Attorney General's office. I've basically said to them in simple terms, this religious freedom bill is the unfinished business of same-sex marriage. See, when they legislated same-sex marriage, everybody warned them that there would be consequences for religious freedom. We were promised then, oh, no, your freedoms will be protected. We'll look after that. Then we got the Ruddock Report, which then just kicked the can down the road. And so it's like the question is, what part of same-sex marriage did religious people get? Nothing. It wasn't for us. Okay? Well, this issue, religious freedom, shouldn't be viewed as primarily for people who are non-religious. It's for religious people. So and I guess the way I put it in simple terms is I don't accept same-sex marriage. I don't agree with it. But I accept a same-sex couple's right to marry because the government's changed the law. Yeah. So I accept that, even though I disagree with it. Okay. So therefore, somebody who's gay, for example, needs to accept my right to quote Leviticus 18:22, which says, "A man shall not lie with a man as with a woman, for it's an abomination before the Lord." They should accept my right to quote that as my scripture, even if they don't disagree with it. I'm not saying that, I think gays should be stoned or I think, gays are bad people.
I don't want
my scripture. No, but you see what I'm saying? I'm saying I'm quoting my scripture there.
Go ahead.
And that's what Falau did. Falau quoted the Bible.
He did.
And if we get to a point where the Bible is hate speech in this country, God help us all. You see, so that's what I'm standing up for. I'm fighting for my right to quote my scriptures, okay? And if other people don't agree with those scriptures, that's their issue. They don't have to believe them, okay? But they can say what they like that I might disagree with, and I have to be able to say what I like, even if they disagree with it. One of the people in our alliance, who's the president of the Imams Council, he's been open about his opposition to same-sex marriage. He was actually there was a whole hoo-ha in the media about 3 years ago because he was invited to a dinner at Malcolm Turnbull's at Kirribilli House, right? And he wouldn't back down. So they said to him, and on Sunrise they said, "Oh, Turnbull should be careful who he invites for dinner and all that." And what Shadi said, "Look, the Quran says this. The Quran calls it an abomination." And he was just quoting the Quran. Now, I don't believe that the Quran is scripture, but he's got his right to quote his scripture.
He does.
Okay? And this is the problem the government has. Okay, the Old Testament is considered scripture by the Muslims, the Torah. So they revere the Torah as scripture. Christians revere the Torah as scripture, as do the Jews. Put all those people together around the world. How many people do you have with those three religions? 4 billion people.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. Okay, many millions of people across the country, this country. Okay, so you're going to, that's why the government's got an issue with this. The holy scriptures of almost half the country, because at the last census, the country was still 52% Christian. Add the Muslims in there, they're about 5%, so 57%. Okay, so the holy scriptures of over half the country say that homosexuality and same-sex marriage is an abomination. I'm using that word deliberately because that's what Leviticus says. People want to throw rocks at me. Take it up with Moses. He wrote the Bible, not me. You see? But that's the point I'm making. All right. And the Apostle Paul said some fairly significant things about homosexuality as well. In 1 Corinthians 6:9, that's the verse that that Israel Folau quoted, right? So here's some fairly strong things. And so the Bible's very clear on that. And so I guess at the end of the day, I come back to what I said before. A civil society allows for you to have your view, me to have my view. If I don't agree with your view, I respect your right to hold it. Okay? But I don't try and shut you down or deplatform you or take you to an anti-discrimination tribunal or try and bankrupt you or any of that other stuff. Okay? That's not how civil society operates. I mean, people have said to me, how do you work with Muslims if you don't agree with them? Well, it was very simple.
It's a weird question, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you how we worked. When I sat down with them the first time, I said very clearly, look, I don't agree with your theology, so we're not going to talk about theology. We're not going to talk about Palestine because we're not going to agree there. Let's keep our conversations to what we do agree on religious freedom. And I said to him, I'll teach my kids what I believe. You can teach your kids what you believe. And when they're older, when they grow up, let them debate each other and may the best man win.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I'm all about, okay, if you have an issue with a particular worldview, don't try and stop the people having it. Attack the ideology. Go and, take apart the fundamental. Sorry? No,
not the person, the idea, yeah, the concept.
Love the individual, but attack the idea.
I completely agree in every way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why, with homosexual people, I had, I'm friendly with gay people that I meet. I don't agree with what they do. Now, to make it clear, I'm also consistent, because here's where Christians are inconsistent. They'll say things like, a religious school shouldn't employ a same-sex a teacher in a same-sex marriage because they're not in a biblical marriage, right?
Correct. Correct that they're not biblical marriage.
Yes.
Not that they can be
but what about the teachers that they employ that are living de facto? Are they in the biblical marriage?
No.
No. See, a religious school, if it's going to be consistent, shouldn't employ teachers like that either.
I think I agree, and I try so hard to be politically consistent and thought consistent, and many, I think, don't do that. No, I'm not crediting myself, saying pat on the back, go me, that I try, but I really don't think people on the right, or specifically nationalists, sometimes don't have that same consistency. So it's good to hear. You want to move forward, or maybe move your camera.
Okay. Yeah. And that's why when I spoke to a church last year, actually during the campaign, and at the time I was single, I said, well, I still am single, but I said to them, I said, I don't have. See, and it's funny. I said,
I wasn't laughing at the fact that you were single. I don't mean that to come across as rude. I know a lot of people went, oh.
No, but it was funny. No, what happened was I stood up there and I said, I stand before you, a single man. I'm divorced. I said, and then I said, so the world would. Sorry.
Just kidding.
No, but sorry, but the world would say, okay, society would say that I have the right to just go down to the local pub and pick up a girl for the night. Correct? That's
sure.
But does the Bible allow me to do that? No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. So if
that's a very, very strict way to think. I didn't even think about that. That's yeah.
Either the Bible's the word of God or it isn't.
No, it is. Yeah, no, it is.
But if it is, all of it's the word of God, and you've got to live your life according to what it says. Otherwise, people who don't believe are justified in calling us hypocrites. You see, and one of the problems we have is that we don't live. We don't walk our talk, and then people say, "Oh, you guys are just a bunch of hypocrites." You do what everyone else does, and you pretend to be holy on Sunday morning, and you rag out about same-sex couples, but you turn the other cheek you look the other way when this is happening, And I try not to do that. I'm not perfect, We all make mistakes, but I'm trying to be consistent in what I'm saying publicly, so that before I say something publicly, I've got to check the scriptures and make sure that, what I say, is not going to contradict anything I live by.
Well, this is why I agree with you so much, and I really do try to be politically and thought consistent. But this is why I get bothered by the movement, for lack of another word. I don't even know if I want to consider myself a part of the movement anymore, to be honest, because it's hard to represent something with so much hypocrisy and so many people saying, no, we're not allowed to say anything negative about anyone. And I don't mean negative in a way where I want to out someone for the liar or whatever that they are, because I'm sure I'm a liar, I'm a hypocrite, I'm all of these things. But the difference is that I see it in myself, whereas other people I don't think do.
Yes.
And it bothers me greatly. And I'd rather just represent myself and be a Christian rather than represent the movement and be part of something that isn't working anyway. What the hell is the movement? Who the hell's the movement? Like, yeah, sorry, this is off topic. Anyway, keep going back to what you're talking about.
Yeah. So where we are at now is the government has given us a second exposure draft, of course, the COVID-19 has thrown all that under the bus. I mean, what was supposed to happen is we would get a bill that was going to go to the Senate, and we'd have a couple of months to debate that, and there'd be Senate committees and public submissions, etc. They weren't going to have anything debated in the lower house until after the budget, but the budget's been delayed till October because of COVID-19. So my guess is we won't get this religious freedom bill debated this term of Parliament, which means it's going to be an election issue in 2022. No, to answer your question, no, I'm not gay. I've got lots of kids, and I quite like women. So there you go. It's funny.
It was. Keep going.
Yeah. So it'll be an election issue in 2022, I think. I just don't think it's going to be resolved because neither major party wants to make the hard choice. The problem is giving the religious people, the religious alliance, and I loosely call it the Australian Religious Alliance. I mean, it's not not an official body or anything, but we don't want grey. We want black, and the Equality Campaign or our opposition. I'm just using them as just an example. The people who want to not give us the ability to say that homosexuality is an abomination according to our scriptures. They don't want black. They want white. You see, if you're trying to give someone grey and they don't want grey, you're only going to upset both camps. And so I've been trying to suggest to the government, look, you've given the and it's funny. I mean, I'll tell you what one of my Muslim colleagues told an MP, a Labor MP. He said, you're going to have to decide. He said, you're going to have to decide. You've given the gay people what they want, their rights. Fair enough, you've given them their rights, but we want our rights. And he said, you're going to have to decide, are you going to look after our community or are you going to look after them? But you can't do both on this issue, right? And they were taken aback because usually Labor are like, wow, because they take the multicultural vote for granted. But that's changing now. And so at this point, I guess we're waiting now to see what the Prime Minister and the Attorney General give us for a parliamentary bill. But because of COVID-19, I can't see that happening anytime soon.
No.
So there you go.
Well, there we go. That's everything I needed to know about that specifically. Yes. The reason, for those who are wondering how I became in contact with you and how I came to know who you are, there's this ongoing silly joke that Dougal Cameron is my boyfriend. He's 10 years younger than me, but he's adorable. Yes. But so I first saw you on Dougal Cameron's channel, the Carnage,
yes.
The Carnage House.
Yes.
Yeah, and I love their style of interview and how they do it. It's sort of a little bit Joe Rogan-y and Dave Rubin, except that they're young and they're sort of not affiliated with any party, and I love that. I think they're just good guys.
And you saw, I should have worn the same T-shirt tonight. It's okay to say no, right?
Exactly. I was going to say that T-shirt that you had on, I was like watching you at the start of this interview going, oh, this is a guy that is against gay marriage. And I thought you were against gay marriage based purely on logic. but it turned out that you also happened to have a biblical foundation for it.
Yes.
And I love that it was sort of backwards for me, because usually I'm like, oh, that person's a Christian, we're aligned in this, but your arguments were completely logical, and you didn't even, I don't think you mentioned in that interview faith or Christ at all, at least not for that argument. And I like that. Like, I know people hate Ben Shapiro. People in my audience hate Ben Shapiro because they think he's a cuck and all of that stuff. But what I like about Ben Shapiro is that he can refer to the Bible, but he never does. He refers to logic and science.
No, you're right. I mean, I think if you believe that the Bible is the Word of God, let's assume that it is the Word of God. Yeah, but if you believe that, then you shouldn't be afraid of logic and science, because the same God that created the Bible created logic and science. You see, so
yes.
And if you believe that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and God was behind the Big Bang, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, because you need a big banger for a big bang. If you believe that, then you shouldn't. Then you believe that the same God that created the universe wrote the Bible. There should be consistency between the two. They should complement each other, right? And so, you know, maybe I can just briefly tell that story of that T-shirt.
Okay. How much time do I have with you? Because we started late.
We can. I'm okay. You can keep going.
Okay, go for your life.
It's raining. I'm not playing tennis tonight.
Oh, because you were originally.
I was going to play tennis. Yes, I was going to go and
1.5 minutes away from the other person.
And wipe the court with this guy that's younger than me, which I get a real kick out of. But that's another story. Sorry. Anyway, I went running because I thought I'm actually going to go, because I run for exercise, and as I'm going to purposely wear this T-shirt to provoke something.
And you did.
And I did, yeah. And because I'm going to see if someone answers, you know, if someone sort of takes it up, just to see what. And he said, you shouldn't be allowed to wear that. And I said, why not?
Yeah.
You know, and he said, why not? And I said, you know, you're advertising Tommy Hilfiger. Why can't I advertise this?
Yeah.
And so we were. Anyway, I won't bore you with the story of the back and forth.
No, tell the story.
Anyway, he started saying things about I'm a hater, and I said, why do you say that? And I just asked him to explain why, you know. So then I started asking him questions about, you know, so do you know what happens to children who are raised by same-sex couples, and do you know what the evidence says? And then I asked him a question. I said, which is the question I like to ask people who say that marriage is only about love and all that. And so I said, okay, so what's so special about the number two? Why two people?
Exactly.
You know?
1 or 4.
Well, exactly. Well, see, because if you look at the, you know, LGBT, right? So the B in the LGBT. Okay, if you're going to legislate homosexual marriage, you have to legislate bisexual marriage, because if it's only about love, their love is equally valid. And if you accept the argument that the homosexual is wired that way, then the bisexual is wired that way as well, right? And so they need to be married. They need to be married. They can't be satisfied marrying one person, because they need to be able to marry a person of either sex. Mm-hmm. So we're having this back and forth, and he's like, oh, okay. And then I asked him, what's the purpose of marriage, right? And he sort of, oh, well, it's for love. And I said, well, okay, so has it always been that way? I said, why do governments care then? Why do governments make marriage laws? Mm-hmm. And he sort of stumped him a bit. And I said, why does the government care who you marry, right? What does the government, you know, friendships have, you know, lots of love and commitment. Does the government regulate friendships?
Yeah, I'm bisexual then, because I love my male friends and my female friends.
Yeah. Or here's another one. Okay. Did you know that the majority of the world's marriages are actually arranged?
In India and like the Middle East.
In India and the Middle East and places like that, right? They've never even met a lot of the time. So
but they don't ever divorce.
I know. But their marriages aren't about love initially. They learn to love each other.
They do.
Yes. So love can become a feature of the marriage, but it's not the foundational purpose. There's a difference.
Not there, it isn't. Yeah.
No, but so if it's not the foundational purpose there, it's not the foundational purpose here. I'll tell you why. See, why do governments make marriage laws?
I don't know, but they should stay out of they should stay out of our marriages in general, even gay marriage. But
but
why
what?
do they
But,
make?
but there's a good reason why governments have to make marriage laws.
Because they can track us. I don't know
No.
why. Why?
What comes from marriages usually, as a rule?
Children.
Sorry.
Offspring.
Exactly. So who makes better parents? Biological parents or governments?
Oh, biological parents, male and female.
There you go. That's right. So if governments don't create the environment for male and female to stay together to raise their children, the government has to raise them. So here's a simple fundamental. Here's human society 101, dear. Okay, human society. Every society that survives needs to have 2.1 babies per live female per year, so that society keeps going. That's simple demographics. That's been well established. If a society has a birth rate of less than, say, 2 kids per live female per year, over time the society is going to die out, because there are not enough babies to replace the people that die, right? Now, what's the simplest and easiest? David Bryson, good on him. What's the simple? I know that guy.
Okay.
Let me ask you, what's the simplest and easiest way to make babies?
Sex.
Exactly. Male-female sex. Male-female sex. Right?
Yes.
Okay, male-female sex, right? Simplest and easy. So, but here's a problem with the human species. Unlike cows or gazelles or things like that, where the calf can run within a couple of hours of being born, human babies need 1 to 2 decades of care from both from both parents.
I'm on my 3rd decade of
care. But you know what I'm saying. Between one,
I was joking. I'm not living with my parents.
Yeah, I know. But here's the thing. Okay, the government needs responsible taxpayers and citizens. Correct?
Yeah.
Because who's going to pay taxes to keep the government going and to look after the old people? Sorry?
Gay people pay taxes.
Yeah, but the government needs a new supply of people to pay taxes.
Oh, yes, understood. Yeah, gotcha.
Do gay people reproduce?
Well, they have families, but they rent a wing.
They can't reproduce. 2 men.
No, they can't reproduce. Sorry, but they rent
themselves. In and of themselves.
No, of course not.
In and of themselves. So if homosexual marriage was the norm for society, we'd have no society left. Think about it.
Say that again.
If homosexual marriage was the norm for societies, you'd have no society left.
Of course. I agree.
Yeah. So here's a way to think about it. Babies come when men and women get together.
Mm-hmm.
Good citizens come when men and women stay together. Right?
Yes.
And marriage is the institution that was created, okay, to make sure that men and women stay together. And it's been like that for 5 millennia, right? The first marriage laws are found in Egypt and Mesopotamia. Hammurabi,
okay.
The laws of Hammurabi actually have a lot of, and the lawyers that are listening to you will know about this. Probably half to 2/3 of Hammurabi's laws deal with marriage and child support, and if a man has children with a woman and he leaves her, he's got to make sure they're looked after and things like that. This goes back 4,000 or 5,000 years. Right? This isn't modern. Now, the evolutionary anthropologist. So here I'm talking like I'm not a Christian. This is how they explained it.
Go ahead.
They said that before 5,000 years ago, men. And typical nasty men, it's all our fault, right? Men would go around impregnating women, all right, and leave them to raise their children alone.
I wouldn't mind being impregnated. Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, but how long do you think? That's okay. But how long do you think a baby would have survived 5,000 years ago with a woman raising it on her own through hardship and predators and thieves and all that, without a man around? We're not talking women's lib nowadays. We're talking...
It wouldn't have worked.
It wouldn't have worked, that's right. And you had a very high infant mortality rate. So what they speculate is back then our ancestors, and here, again, this is the anthropologist I'm speaking, but isn't it funny how the science supports what the Word of God says, right? What they speculate is that people worked out that men had to stay with the women to raise the children they fathered, otherwise the kids would keep dying.
Yes.
And I don't think it's any coincidence that the first time we see marriage laws are in the river valleys of Egypt and Mesopotamia, which are our two oldest civilizations.
Which are, oh yes, exactly.
Egypt and Mesopotamia.
Yes. Yeah. No. Exactly.
Yeah. So marriage pretty much is the beginning of civilization, because when you have marriage, you have a family.
Mm-hmm.
And a
Adam
family
and Eve.
Yes, but put the Bible aside just for a second. Just even looking at anthropology, right?
Yeah.
Marriage, you have a family. Families can then families that create other families become a clan, and they become cities, and cities become civilizations.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so that's why. And if you look, and I've had people say to me, "Oh, yeah, but there are so many different kinds of marriages all around the world, and some marriages last for, and they've changed. That marriages change rituals over and over and over again. So why shouldn't we change it?" That's actually a straw man argument, right? Because I'll give you an analogy. Right?
Okay.
Okay, food. Let's look at food here, right? Thai food is different to Italian food or Spanish food, correct? Okay. You've got I don't know, Thai fried rice, and you've got paella. Okay. Right?
I love paella.
Okay, it's paella. Okay. But let me ask you this. Paella, is paella a combination of animal and vegetable material cooked or raw?
It's a combination. Prawns
of animal and vegetable material,
yes,
cooked or raw. Is Thai fried rice a combination of animal and vegetable material cooked or raw?
Yes.
It is. The fundamentals are the same.
Yes.
Okay. So whether you look at marriage in Egypt, in Mesopotamia, in India, in Greece, in wherever, you've got one man, one woman together for life.
Yeah.
They might be wearing different wedding dresses. They might have different wedding ceremonies, but that's the externals. That's not the foundation.
No.
It's like a house. A single-story house has much the same foundation, whether it's painted yellow, red, whether it's got brick veneer. The foundation is much the same, right? And so marriage as an institution, its foundation has always been male and female together raising the children. And it's been like that. And then they'll talk about, oh, what about polygamy? Yeah, all right. Only kings used to do that.
He's not. He's a Christian. He's not Eastern Orthodox.
No, I'm not Eastern Orthodox. No, I guess you'd call me non-denominational, Pentecostal, whatever you want to call me.
Me too, non-denominational.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. But polygamy is practiced today by Mormon subsects.
Yes, it is. But again, you wouldn't consider them as representative of Christianity as a whole, would you?
Thank you. No, I don't think Mormons are Christian, even though I know that's offended people when I've said that in the past.
No, but you wouldn't consider them even they may not be representative of the entire Mormon church, right?
No.
As you said, a Mormon subset, right? See, again, we've got to be careful about looking at exceptions versus rules.
Of course. So the rule is polygamy doesn't. Yeah.
The rule is one man, one woman for one lifetime. That's what the rule. Okay, that's what the rule, and it's always been that way. And in arranged marriage cultures, it's that way. In romantic marriage cultures, it's that way. In cultures that have a marriage ceremony lasting for a week, it's that way. In cultures that elope in places like Las Vegas, it's that way. Okay, people don't necessarily get married thinking they're going to divorce the next day.
Yeah.
And then this argument of, oh, what about all the marriages that end in divorce? Well, that's like, comparing, and they say that, oh, well, heterosexual marriages failed. You don't worry about that. So why are you worried about same-sex marriages? That's not comparing apples with apples. If you're going to compare apples with apples, you compare the best example of one with the best example of another. Okay, you don't compare one apple that's clean and another apple's got a worm in it.
Yeah.
Okay, so comparing same-sex marriage with a failed heterosexual marriage, okay, is like comparing an orange with an apple with a worm in it. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, you got to compare an apple with an apple.
That's a good illustration.
But it's true, okay?
It's
so
true,
if you
but
take the best example,
that would offend polygamists and gay couples hearing that, but it's very true.
oh, look, but
I just love
you
it. I
compare,
love the illustration.
but that's the point. The point I'm making is a failed heterosexual marriage is not the best example of a heterosexual marriage. Okay.
No, of course not.
Okay. So you don't compare the worst example of one with the best example of another. You compare the outcomes of a loving heterosexual marriage. The couple that have been there for, I mean, for example, the Prime Minister, by all accounts, he's in love with his wife, and they've been married a long time, and by all accounts, they're happily married. Okay, that's an example of a successful heterosexual marriage, right?
Yes.
You don't compare same-sex marriages to a failed one. You compare them to a successful one in terms of outcomes. Okay, and so anyway, so we had all this discussion, and then at the end of it all, we shook hands, and I gave him my card, and I said, here's a YouTube channel that's got some stuff on it that can, it was a friendly discussion.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's so good, and you ended up turning him around a little bit on the topic. He went in aggressive, and then he understood your perspective, whether he agreed with you or not. Yeah.
What I said to him, look, because his name was David. I said, David, my objective here is not to convince you to vote like me. You do what you want to do. My objective here is to show you that not everybody who votes no is a knuckle-walking troglodyte.
Absolutely true.
Right? Yeah, I said we can vote no, and we can have good reasons for voting no, and we can be respectful. And I said, I hope I've come across that way. And he says, no, you've been good, Con, thanks. And we shook hands, and I went off running.
Exactly, so, that's so good.
Yeah. So and I don't mind people who disagree with me. The problem with God is that they want to deplatform you. They want to you come and talk say something controversial, or you're going to talk about something controversial, and they want to shut you down. And I just don't want to have a country like that.
No,
exactly. I don't want my kids to grow up in a country like that.
I agree. Let's touch on the last topic, which will be this is a funny thing that I used to say before I started doing my channel. These are the two things I said I would never talk about publicly, because at the time I think I was a little bit scared, a little bit of a cuck, very much a weak Christian. But I said the two things I'll never talk about publicly is people being fat and how that's a sin to be fat. I never wanted to talk about fatness and obesity. I felt horrible. I don't believe you. You look great.
No,
and
I was your fat boy at school.
Were you? I've never been fat. My sister and my brother and everyone in my family at one time has been chubby or fat. I, thank the Lord, have always been thin. Suck on it. And the other topic that I said I would never talk about publicly is creationism. But now I'm yet to talk about fat acceptance and all that crap. It's still a topic I'm not comfortable talking about. But creationism, I'm fine to talk about. Now, you and I, when we spoke on the phone, you sort of alluded to the fact that you and I would disagree on our versions of creationism. But the point is that you are a Bible-believing Christian, and that you still do believe in creation as opposed to evolution.
Yes.
In my view, in my view, man is always wrong. So why would we believe them on something that they couldn't observe that happened, what they say, somewhere in the billions of years ago? So what is your take on the issue? I want to hear it.
Well, I think the argument that you weren't there. Well, you weren't there when Moses parted the Red Sea. You see,
true.
And you weren't there when Jesus died on the cross, right?
True.
So that's a fallacious argument.
Yeah,
that's a fallacious argument. The question is, does the text support a view one way or the other? Now, in a sense, okay, let me just sort of clarify what I believe, and I'll explain why. I believe that that if God created the universe, and if God wrote the Bible, then they should be consistent. They should be able to be not so much married, but there shouldn't be major contradictions in them, because you've got the same author writing both. Okay. And so, and then when you look at the holy books, see, okay, if the argument goes like this: does God exist? Okay, if God exists, I mean the argument, because I do a lot of apologetics teaching. So my first question is,
I love that. Where keep going?
Yes. So my first
34.
I go through 4 steps, right? First question is, does truth exist? Because you've got to combat that first. You've got to be able to say that relativism is a self-defeating worldview. Okay, and then if truth exists, are there truths that are true for all of us? And I go through a certain 3 or 4 things that show that God exists, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If there's a God, which God? Okay, because the arguments, for example, the cosmological argument for God, the design argument for God, that doesn't prove the God of the Bible. That just proves a God, a theistic God.
Yeah.
A theistic God, as opposed to a deistic God, right? And so then the question is, all right, which God? And so then I look at comparing the holy books of the different scriptures, and the Bible is the one that is, there's no real contradictions between what the Bible says about the things it discusses.
Textual criticism.
Sorry. And textual criticism has shown that the Bible we have today is the same Bible that Jesus had and that the people in the Old Testament had. But what I'm talking about is, the Bible doesn't say things like the Hindu Vedas that say we have an oscillating universe, of multiverses and things like that.
Oh,
it doesn't say things. Sorry. No,
I didn't know that.
And it doesn't say things like the Quran, which says that the sun sets in a spring of muddy water. Okay, or that the stars are missiles that Allah throws at the jinn who want to sneak into paradise.
Devil's advocate.
Yeah.
That many claim that the Bible says the world is flat. That would be an indiscrepancy. If the Bible says that, which I don't think it does.
It talks about the 4 corners of the earth. It never actually says that the world is flat. So again, you're looking at the frame of reference of some. Yes, yeah, I know, but I'm explaining to you. For somebody who's on and I will double check it, but I believe somewhere in Job it also talks about the spheres in the heaven.
It does.
It
actually does, but I was trying to lead to another argument for the atheist watching or whatever.
Yeah. But the idea of the 4 corners of the earth, that's a metaphor for because if you think if you stand, see, things are written according to frame of reference, okay? Because a human being wrote down the Bible, even though they were inspired, it was still the hand of a man that wrote it.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. That man would have been standing on the earth, looking out, and it looks like it's flat, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the Bible teaches that the earth is flat.
Gotcha.
Okay. So and then when you look at so the Bible is the one that best explains, is most consistent with what we know about natural phenomena, and then I'll talk about the resurrection as the evidence for Jesus. Now, in terms of, so I'm a creationist. I would be what you would call an old Earth creationist, because I believe that God did create Adam and Eve. I don't believe in theistic evolution. Okay. No. But I believe that the first 11 chapters of Genesis, there's a lot of figurative language in there. Okay, for example, it talks about in Genesis chapter 1, there's evening and morning, right? Okay, but then it gets to evening and then it gets to the 7th day. There's no evening and morning. So the 7th day, even if you say the others aren't 24-hour periods, the 7th day is not a 24-hour period. So that suggests that the other 6 days may not be as well. When you look at the Hebrew word yom, it can be read 4 different ways. It can be translated 4 different ways. See, what people don't understand is, and I've studied biblical Hebrew, not to the scholarly level, but enough that Hebrew is different to English or Greek, for that matter. Okay? Of course. Hebrew is a smaller language in terms of the number of words available, right? So each word has many, many meanings.
Okay.
Right. Okay. And in English we have that to a degree as well. For example, the word light can mean light in weight, but it can also mean light, okay, in terms of spectral light. But Hebrew is a lot more like that. And so no, I didn't sell him a dodgy watch in South Sydney. So the Hebrew word yom has 4 meanings, and you can look at any lexicon. Brown Driver Briggs lexicon that I've got on my phone says this. As a matter of fact, I might actually read what it says. So
go ahead.
You can see. I'll just pull up if I can find it. No, this one, yeah. So just to, and this is where, because it has so many meanings, you've got to look at the context. So, no,
Context is important.
Bear with me. I am. There we go. Okay. Evening, morning, one day. Okay. The word yom means to be hot, a day, whether literal, from one sunrise to sunset, or from one sunset to the next, or figurative, brackets, a space of time defined by an associated term. It means an age. Evening means life. It can mean perpetually, presently, seasoned. Okay. It can mean a year. So it can mean an unspecified period of time. We even do that in English. Okay. Have you ever heard the old person say, "Oh, back in my day"?
Absolutely.
Have you heard? What day were they talking about? Tuesday?
No, their era when they were young.
Their era, back in my time. That's right. Okay. Or the Judgment Day, the day of the Lord. I suspect it's probably not going to be 24 hours where the whole human race is going to be judged. I could be wrong, okay, but I suspect it's going to be, because it's going to be in the eternal realm. Sorry?
It's going to be over 7 billion people for the last.
Yeah, and it's going to be in the eternal realm. See, that's what we forget. God is outside of time.
It's a lot of shame.
And let's look at day 6. Okay, day 6, creation day 6. God creates the animals.
Yes.
Right. I think then He creates Adam.
Yes.
Right. Adam works the garden
for however long, we don't know, between him and Eve. Is that what you're about to say?
Okay. He names all of the animals.
He does.
And then God says that it's not good for man to be alone. Okay. Adam gets lonely.
I agree with God.
Yeah. Okay. But you see, and then He puts Adam to sleep.
Right? Yes. He gives
and then
he does his
biopsy. He does his biopsy and he makes Eve.
Yes.
And some Hebrew scholars translate the word hapa'am that Adam says when he sees Eve, at long last. Right? And so I find it difficult to get to accept that that's all 24 hours.
Well, it might not have been. Someone used the word eon or some epoch.
Yes, but that's my point. My point is that, there were 7 spaces, there were 7 ages or 7 eons. I don't disagree that there were 7 yoms, but they may not have all been 24 hours. Now, here's the other problem. You've got evening and morning, right? But how did the Hebrews measure evening and morning?
I don't know.
Well, how do you think? Well,
I would think evening is anything from 6 o'clock onwards.
But how did they tell that it was evening? What was changing in the sky? The sun was color. Going down. The sun was going down.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Well,
and the sun was rising for morning.
Yes.
Right. But then it tells us that the sun wasn't created until day 4.
Oh, okay.
You see?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, we don't have to take them literally. We can take them metaphorically to a degree. To a degree. So the only difference between me and a young Earth creationist is I don't have a problem with believing that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old and that the universe is 13.5 billion years old. I believe that God intervened in that time to create the animals and to create life. And I believe Psalm 104 tells us that, because Psalm 104 says that, you take your spirit away, and they are, and they die. Then you, I'll read what it says. So Psalm 104 talks about, extinction, speciation. So I should have had these references ready, but I didn't really know which way we're going to go.
Dude, I wrote it. I told you what we were talking about.
Yeah, no. Yeah, but I'm saying that this particular psalm was going to come up. Okay, so he says, "O Lord," this is from verse 24. "O Lord, how many and varied are your works! In wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of your riches and your creatures. There is the sea, great and broad, in which are swarms without number." I'll go to a different translation because I prefer the word-for-word translation. Here we go. "You open your hand; they are filled with food. That's right. These all wait for you, these creatures, that you give them their food in due season. What you give them, they gather in. You open your hand, you are filled with good. You hide your face, they are troubled. You take away their breath, they die and return to the dust. You send forth your spirit, they are created, and you renew the face of the earth. Okay, so there's Psalm 104 talking about species going extinct and species, and then the Lord renewing the face of the earth. So, I think that the young earth, old earth sort of debate is an intra-family debate. It's, look, people can have a young earth view if they want to. Their challenge is that they're going to have to explain things like, the fact that all the science tells us that rates of radiometric decay haven't changed, and that the redshift tells us that the stars are billions of light years away. Okay, and that is a problem. If you're going to take a young earth view, you have to find a way. Now, I've heard people say that, oh yeah, well, the rates of radiometric decay have changed, or the laws of physics changed, or the speed of light was different, and that's why we get these measurements for redshift. The Bible doesn't say that. The Bible says the laws of heaven and earth are fixed. Okay, and if the rates of things like radiometric decay have changed over time, I mean, that's what drives the sun. And if it's sped up, we would have seen a far greater level of nuclear fusion in the sun. Earth would have been burnt to a crisp. The sun would have burnt out quicker. So there are all these questions that, whatever worldview you take, you have to answer. So I just think that taking the view I'm not fixed to saying that it's 24 hours, but I can say that God created Adam, God created Eve, God created the animals. And I don't believe in evolution. Let me rephrase that. I don't believe in macro evolution, because remember on Dougal's show I said there are 4 kinds of evolution.
I do remember that, but I just feel like that complicates everything saying that. I feel like we've just adapted. Yeah. Adam and Eve were a completely different looking kind of human. We've devolved throughout time.
No. Let me correct. There are 4 kinds of evolution.
Go ahead.
No? Okay. Well, okay. No, you finish then. Just to make sure I've not misrepresented you.
Oh no, just that Adam and Eve were like perfect DNA, and we're now down to like 7 billion people. About maybe 10,000 years later, we are certainly not as great a specimen, human, Olympic athlete level type or whatever than they were. We've devolved, not evolved. Yes. That was what I was going to say. Continue.
Yeah, no, but that's my point. I don't believe that humans will evolve. What I'm saying is that, see, it depends what you mean. It depends what you mean by evolution, and you always have to define terms when you're discussing with people. So I'll say, what do you mean by evolution? Okay, if you mean change over time, okay, even a little bit of change over time, we see that.
Yes, we have changed over time.
Yeah, we see certain species of moths change color, but they say the same species of moth. We see bacteria evolve. That's how antibiotic resistance occurs. So that's another kind of evolution, bacterial evolution. One kind of evolution is speciation, where the one species will turn into maybe a sister species, and that's what Darwin used to try and. I mean,
the Galapagos Islands.
Sorry, the Galapagos Islands. He saw the beaks of the finches change, but they're still finches. The finch doesn't turn into an eagle.
A turtle.
That's right. Okay. What you just talked about is macro evolution. In other words, change from one body plan into another body plan.
Like a human to a gorilla.
That's right. Or monkey to man. In other words, from the goo to you through the zoo, right?
I got a monkey's uncle.
Yeah. I don't accept. I don't believe in that, and I don't believe there's any evidence that no one's been able to show conclusive evidence of the radical body plans you would need, even just to change from monkey to man. Because as I said on Dougal's show, our spines are a different shape to a simian's. Our skulls are a different shape. Okay, the changes that have to happen are so radical. The chest cavity's got to change. The pelvic cavity's got to change. The human spine is an S shape, whereas a monkey spine is a C shape. Right? Okay.
I have scoliosis.
These are It's a little bit like trying to say, and then they say, oh yeah, but the monkey's got hands and feet. Like, okay, well, what are you trying to tell me? But here's what they're trying to tell you. Okay, let me. Okay, does a motorbike have an engine?
Yes. Doesn't it?
Does a
Yeah.
motorbike have wheels?
Yes.
Does it have rubber tires?
Yes.
Does it run on petrol?
Yes.
A car, does it have rubber tires?
Yes.
Does it have wheels?
Yes.
Does it have an engine?
Yes.
And it runs on petrol?
Yeah. Similar architecture.
Exactly. Do you think you could how likely do you think it is for a motorbike to evolve into a car? That's
Very
the kind of
unlikely.
change.
Similar
Yeah,
blueprint.
that's the
Architecture.
sorry. Yeah,
Blueprint. Blueprint.
yeah, no, but a technician, a designer, can turn a motorbike into a car.
Yes.
Take the parts, you could theoretically possible, okay, but the design is doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen by itself. You see, so a monkey turning into a man is like expecting a car to turn into a motorbike without external input, without design.
Scientists are merely waiting for the missing link. That's what they keep saying. And if they keep looking for it, they can find it, but it'll be a manipulation, and it won't be completely natural. It'll be a manipulation. It'll be not of God.
The problem is I've got a lot of that information in front of me. I won't bore you with the detail, but every time they find a fossil, they have to redraw the evolutionary tree.
Yeah, I know. I've noticed that every time.
Yes, every time they find a fossil, they've got to redraw the evolutionary tree.
They're like, oh, we found this. Oh, it's
see, if your theory is true, the more evidence that's collected, should it validate your theory? It should validate it. Okay, but here's the problem: every time they find a fossil, they've got to go back and redraw the tree.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and like for example, the one that a lot of people may not realize is we used to be taught at school. I used to be taught when I was taught evolution that it went from an ape to what's called an Australopithecine or Australopithecus, Lucy, right?
Oh yes,
and then we went to a hominid called Homo erectus,
yes,
right, which was the first upright. And then through Homo erectus, it went through a few other phases, finally to Neanderthals, right? And then Neanderthals evolved to Homo sapiens, which is us, right? That's roughly what we were taught, what I was taught. Yeah. Now, basically, it's well established that the Neanderthals are a side branch. So they don't believe that Neanderthals evolved into humans. They're a side branch now. And the Africanus, the Australopithecus africanus, that they used to think was the ancestor, now they think, many paleontologists now think that may be a side branch. So every time they find a fossil, they've got to go back to the drawing board. What that tells me is their idea is not correct.
Absolutely not. These creatures are probably antediluvian.
Well,
children of the giants or something. I don't know.
That could be. I mean, or God could have just made hominids that are animals that God made that went extinct. I mean, it's interesting, and this is just a hypothesis. Okay, so but it's interesting that if you look at extinction rates of species where there were where there were hominids, and when humans arrived on the scene, versus where there weren't hominids and humans arrived on the scene, like Australia, there weren't really any. We haven't found any hominids in Australia. Okay.
What does that mean, hominids?
Homin, like the primitive man, the Neanderthal or the
Yeah.
And actually, I'll probably have it here. They found that in countries or in areas where there were hominids, the animals got used to humanoid creatures much better, and the survival rates were much higher. The extinction rates were much lower. Okay, which means that and these scholars say, well, God was using the hominids to prepare these animals for humans. Okay, so they got used to and look, that's just a hypothesis. What I'm saying is that it's not beyond the realms of possibility that God could have had a reason for creating these hominids to and then when that purpose was no longer served, or whether it was a flood or whatever it was, okay, they went extinct. The point is they didn't become humans. This is what I'm trying to say. Now, we do observe, so we do observe bacterial evolution. Now, here's something I want to mention because I checked up on this.
Go ahead.
We observe that bacteria evolve. Okay, that's how antibiotic resistance comes about. And they've done an experiment. It's called the E. coli evolution experiment.
Yeah.
And I think it was started in 1985 or something like that. And what they did was they've got they started with a culture of E. coli. Are you familiar with E. coli, the bacteria? It's the bacteria that's in poo, basically.
Oh yes, I've heard of it. Yeah.
So it's you know it's the predominant component of human feces. Okay, that's its claim to fame. That's why it's called E. coli, from colon, right? So they got this culture of E. coli bacteria and just let them evolve and control the conditions, and they're up to now 60,000 generations, because the replication time for these bacteria is maybe, I don't know, 15 hours or something, right? So they've been following these bacteria over
Thanks for that.
They've been following these bacteria for 60,000 generations, right? Now, guess what? And they make a big deal of, oh, yes, we've seen this genetic change, and we've seen this genetic change.
They do say that.
Guess what? Yeah, and they may have seen that genetic change, but the E. coli stays E. coli. It doesn't turn into a different bacterium.
Doesn't become ice cream.
Yeah, or even it doesn't become like, have you heard of Staphylococcus? It's another type of bacterium.
No, I'm sorry.
Or it doesn't become, I don't know, I mean, they're a bacteria of different shape, okay? E. coli is like a rod, okay? Other bacteria are like a comma shape. Staphylococci are like a little, like a bunch of grapes.
Okay.
Circles. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the point. The E. coli don't turn into the rod bacteria doesn't turn into a circle bacteria.
No. Okay.
It stays a rod bacteria. It stays the same species. So all we've done is observe that we've observed at the microscopic level what Darwin observed at the macroscopic level. Now think about it. 60,000 generations. How many years would that be in human years?
No.
It would probably be millions.
Okay.
If one generation is 25 years, 60,000, that's 120, that's 1.2 million equivalents, right? And so if humankind evolved over, and if evolution, macroevolution was the mechanism, okay, why shouldn't we have seen bacteria change form over the equivalent of 1 million human years? If although the bacteria have been evolving for the equivalent of 1 million human years.
Has this question been asked of anyone? Of any evolutionists? Say Bill Nye the Science Guy or something?
I'm not sure.
That's a good question.
It is a good question, isn't it? Now, the answer to that question, I believe, is that the bacteria have remained the same species. They may have changed strains.
Sounds about right.
They may have changed strains. That's right. Or another, okay, you don't see the E. coli turning into COVID-19.
No. That's a biochemical man-made lab disease. But anyway.
Yeah, but it's a virus, okay?
Yes.
Okay, it's okay. So but they're both microorganisms, aren't they?
Yes.
So if evolution were true, why doesn't the bacterium turn into a virus? Why doesn't it evolve into a virus? It doesn't. So that's my point. There's no evidence that macroevolution is true. No one's ever been able to show proof that one body plan evolves into another body plan, and that's the big problem for what for the Cambrian explosion. Have you heard of the Cambrian explosion?
You're making me feel really I've got to say, because I thought
that's okay. But this is good for you. Yeah, but this is good for your listeners to know, and also because all scientists accept the Cambrian explosion, right?
Okay.
And look, let's assume that the age of the Earth, the carbon dating, the radiometric dating is true, right?
Oh, okay.
The Cambrian strata of rocks Okay, goes back. They've dated it at 550 million years ago, right?
Okay.
Now, when they looked at those fossils, they see a huge a variety of different body plans. They see things like that look like crustaceans. They see things look like sponges. They see things look like primitive crabs, and they're all in the same layer. They all appear roughly the same time. They don't see one evolving into another.
No.
Okay, so and sort of 80% of the body plans that we see on Earth today are in that layer of rock. They appear just like that in geological terms.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big problem for evolutionists, because they need to explain, how did they all just appear kaboom like that? You see, we can explain it, because in Genesis 1:20, God said, "Let the earth teem with creatures, living creatures." You see, so if evolution were true, you should see in one layer of rock something that looks like, say, a crab. Then in the layer of rock above it, you should see something that looks a little bit less like a crab. Then on a layer of rock above it, you should see a little bit less like a crab, and then so on, until the crab becomes a fish.
Keep going. Okay, so it sounds to me, and this is something I've thought for years, obviously I'm a Christian, so I have a natural bias to believe what the Bible says. But at the same time, years and years ago, before I was part of the YouTube culture, I just watched debate after debate, and I loved watching Ken Ham versus Bill Nye, and all of these things on evolution. And I love Ray Comfort on creation versus evolution. It just made sense to me that we were created, because when you apply human understanding to the world, this is a book here. This is a book. It's a book. Like this book was made by someone. Someone wrote it.
Yeah.
So by that logic, everything on Earth, including the Earth, should be, that same logic should be applied, because the Earth is still in the dimension of the planet Earth.
Yeah.
But then an evolutionist will go back and say, well, who created God? I'm like, but that's out of the dimension of human understanding, and that's something that they don't understand, and that doesn't work as an argument for them, because they stump, they pause, like, what? Malfunction.
Well, that's that's a bit right there. The evolutionist is betraying their ignorance of philosophy, because we don't believe in a created God.
No, but that's what they say.
Yeah, but see, there are two kinds of beings, and here, and here's where even Christians don't understand basic philosophy, and they should. There are two kinds of beings. There's what's called a contingent being and a necessary being. A contingent being is something that relies on something else for its existence.
A baby.
Okay, like a baby is a contingent being. A car is a contingent being. It's made by something, right?
Gotcha.
Okay, but here's the problem, and Aristotle recognized this back in the time of the ancient Greeks. You can't keep going back. Okay, if you have, your parents made you, their parents made them, you keep going back. Okay, they evolved from the earth. The earth was created by, and then you keep going back. Let's assume this. Sooner or later, you've got to get to a stopping point, because you can't get to an infinite regress. Okay, it's the same way we know that time had a beginning, even if without the Big Bang, right? Okay. Think of time. Think of the days as one domino knocking over another domino.
Sure.
You know a line of dominoes?
Yeah, I know dominoes.
Yeah. So you know the line of dominoes that you set them up and they go da-da-da-da-da-da, okay? Well, today's domino is knocked over by yesterday.
Yes.
Right? And yesterday's domino is knocked over by the day before it. Correct?
Yes.
But the line of dominoes has got to have a starting point, doesn't it?
Yes, okay. Of course.
If there's no starting point, if the dominoes go back to infinity, would we ever get today's domino get knocked down? If the dominoes go back to infinity, you can't, because you can never get to an infinity. You see? So even though you can talk about a theoretical infinite, you can't have an absolute infinite. It's like I'll mess with your mind a little bit here, but that's all right. Imagine a hotel, right?
Now.
Okay. Now, some of your listeners will recognize Hilbert's Hotel, right? It shows that an absolute infinite is absurd. Okay. Imagine you've got a hotel that's got an infinite number of rooms.
Mm-hmm.
All the rooms are full, right? Okay, I'll give you another, and I'll change it. A bookshelf.
Okay.
Right? An infinite number of books on it. Half the books are red, and half the books are blue.
Okay.
How many red books do you have on the bookshelf?
Well, I don't know. You haven't given a number, so I can divide it.
I have. I've said there's an infinite number of books on the bookshelf.
But you can't. Okay, so half of infinity
is infinity,
of blue, and half of infinity of red,
and half of infinity is infinity.
Okay.
Because infinity has no boundaries. You see how that doesn't? It doesn't exactly. It's absurd. It doesn't make sense.
Hey, so Con, how long is a piece of string? No, just kidding.
Yeah, but that's the point. If time were infinite, we would never get to today. It's like that line of dominoes. Remember the example of the line of dominoes? An infinite number of dominoes in the past?
Yes.
You would never knock over the first domino.
No.
There had to be a first domino.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in the same way, you can't have an infinite regress of causes. You have to get back to a cause that is uncreated, a necessary being.
Yes, okay? But that for some reason that takes more faith to believe that.
No, a necessary being. To build. So now, just to clarify, a necessary being is what we would call God.
I know.
Yeah. Okay. And Aristotle used to call the necessary being an unmoved mover, the unmoved mover, the uncaused cause.
Mm-hmm.
Because if God has a cause, then so who created God? Okay. Then who created the person who created God, and who created the person who created God, and so on. You just keep on going back. Sooner or later, you have to get to a stopping point, and that stopping point is uncreated. Yeah, do you understand that? So we don't believe in a created God.
No, so I know that.
Yeah. So when an atheist tells you that that who created God, you say, "Well, sorry, I don't believe in that. That's not the God I believe in." Right?
No, but then that's my point, though. Like, they're trying to argue what they think is human logic, but they're limited by their I don't know. They're limited by their own restrictions.
Yes. Well. I think they. If you ask me, this is just my view. Because I ask people this question: if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian?
Well, I have, but I don't know about that.
But if you were an atheist, and I said to you, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? If you answer yes, okay. But what if they say no?
It means they want to sin and have sex and do stupid things.
Exactly. I mean, are they interested in the truth, or are they interested in just justifying their own desires?
I don't know. Booty calls can be fun, I hear.
No, but think about it. If you say to them, if I can show you that Christianity is true,
yes,
and they say no, I won't become a Christian, it means they're not interested in the truth.
They're just interested in.
Yes, that's it. And no amount of what you have to do is you have to ask people: are they genuinely looking for evidence, or are they just looking for a pointless argument? I won't have pointless arguments with people. And I'll ask them. Yeah, and I'll ask them. I'll say, I'll just cut to the chase. Okay, if I give you evidence for Christianity, will you follow the evidence wherever it leads? Oh, no. I just want to see what you say. Oh, there's no point then. If you're genuinely interested in evidence, okay, let's have a discussion. But if you just want to have an argument, well, mate, let's just talk about the footy. You know what I mean? And because you got to, because if someone's not interested in having a logical and rational discussion, all they're going to do is throw stupid stuff at you, and stuff that doesn't make sense, and stuff that they've been reading on the internet, which really, a lot of the stuff that circulates on the internet is really disappointing because it's really bad logic and bad philosophy.
It is.
Right? So you talked about Ken Ham and all that. I mean, look, I think Ken Ham does a great job at arguing against evolution, and I support him in that. So in a sense, we're brothers, okay, but we take different views on something within the faith, but we're both united against,
Evolution.
atheism.
Yeah, atheist. Well, the funny thing is, I want to get Ken Ham on my YouTube channel, but I doubt that will happen. He's too much of a big name. But anyway.
Yeah. So someone asked a question there. Where's the macro micro divide?
Yes, they did.
That's just the term that's been used, and I use it because scientists use it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, what I'm talking about when I talk about macroevolution, I'm talking about large-scale change in the body plan. Okay. In other words, a cylinder bacteria becoming a circle bacteria. The body plan's changed.
Okay.
Microevolution is when the body plan stays the same. A cylinder bacteria stays a cylinder bacteria, but it becomes a different kind of cylinder bacteria, but it's still the same body plan. Does that make sense? Okay.
To me,
so that's the best way to think of it. So hopefully that answers the question. That's the macro-micro divide. And the fourth type of evolution that they talk about that no one's ever been able to prove, it's what's called chemical evolution, which is life from which is life from non-life. In other words, the primordial soup, and out of that, DNA somehow appeared.
Yeah, it's basically something out of nothing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that the term that describes that is called chemical evolution. In other words, chemicals evolve.
Yes,
right?
No, I understand what it means. I've never heard that term.
Yeah. So chemical evolution, there's no evidence. Macroevolution, or the change in body plan, there's no evidence. One species becoming a sister species, we see that. Okay. Bacteria evolving antibody, yes, we see that. So I think it's important to differentiate when you're talking about evolution, because they'll say to you, oh, we've seen evidence of one species developing whatever, right?
Yeah, you're like, but
that's not the evolution you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You see, you're talking about a radical change in body plan, right? That's not an example of that. That's not evidence. That's a straw man argument, and that's why I make the distinction. That's why I make the distinction between different kinds of evolution, because they'll try and use the Galapagos finches data or the peppered moth stuff to prove that life came from non-life. You see, you can't do that. And so that's why I spent a bit of time just trying to talk about those four kinds of evolution. So hopefully that helps you there.
It does help me. I love the subject. I used to consume myself with it all the time, and then I exhausted it so much that I got bored of it. But I haven't revisited evolution and creation in I think like 8 years. It's been a while, so there's a lot probably that's happened since then. But I think it'd be extremely easy to disprove evolution or disprove creation. But for some reason, it's not been done. Creation hasn't really been disproven, and neither has evolution. Not really, where the whole world agrees and goes, "Oh yeah, we were wrong about evolution." It hasn't been disproven. So
yes, well, there are historical reasons for that, because in things like the Scopes trial and all that in the US, they didn't use the best examples of creationism at the time, and you also have, unfortunately, some Christians who have embraced what they call theistic evolution, where their view is, now I do not believe this, so their view is that, okay, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and God created the evolutionary process and allowed life forms to develop through evolutionary means. Now, that, according to that view, Adam and Eve did evolve. No, God created basically God created the football field and let the players play, so to speak. Okay, he didn't direct anything, and on that view, man did evolve from monkeys. So you see, that's why it's called theistic evolution. In other words, theism and evolution. Now, that's a real problem there, because the Bible clearly states that God created Adam and Eve, and if there's no original Adam, there's no original sin. Because Christ is described as the second Adam. You see, so
original sin is, we've inherited that since that time.
But where did it come from? If there wasn't a primordial pair. You see, if Adam and Eve evolved, all right, then their sin must have evolved with them, and their sin must have been transferred, and to them is what I'm saying is if Adam and Eve evolved, they must have come from human-like creatures, okay, and therefore, where does the image of God start? So we're created the
Creating his image.
Sorry. Yeah, but
where does the image of God start? Is that what you said?
I'm asking if Adam and Eve evolved, if evolution is true, where does the image of God start? Does it start with the ape-like creature before us? Does it start with the ape-like creature before them? You see, whereas the Bible says very clearly, in the image of God, He created them. It started with humans.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's why I think theistic evolution is very difficult to square with Orthodox Christianity, and I don't agree.
It has too many holes.
Yes. So and I just say that so people understand the difference. Where they might think just because I believe that the Earth is more than 10,000 or man is more than 10,000 years old, they lump me in with the theistic evolutionist. No, I'm not one of them.
Fair enough.
Okay?
Yeah, no, I believe you.
Yes.
Does anyone have questions in the audience? If not, I'm gonna let Con Kafataris go. I've loved this discussion. It's been really good. If I've seemed a bit distracted, it's only because I was trying to make sure that the chat had questions that were answered. I think you answered all the ones that I put on the screen,
Yes,
even though you answered them a little later as well.
Yes.
What Benjamin Molesworth put up a question way earlier. I forgot what he wrote though, but it was a good question about, I think it was about original sin, but I think you just answered it. I can't remember.
Well, I can talk about. I mean, original sin is.
What was your question, Benjamin? Put it back up. Yeah, keep going.
Original sin is as the Bible says it is. You know, God created the primordial pair. You know, as the Bible described. Whether He created them 10,000 years ago or 50,000 years ago, or or whatever. Okay, we can. That's a different debate, but it doesn't change the fact that God created them.
No.
And, I believe in a fall. I believe in a garden.
Yeah.
So and interestingly enough, the geological data says that where the Persian Gulf was, the bottom of the Persian Gulf, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers empty, tens of thousands of years ago, part of that was dry land. So it could well be that and it makes you wonder, why does the Middle East and Saudi Arabia and those areas have so much oil? Okay.
Yeah. Why?
Oil is the byproduct of dead plants and things like that. I mean, it must have been an extremely fertile area, a long time ago. So I believe in a garden. I believe in a fall. I believe in a literal Adam and Eve, and all the stuff that the Bible affirms. And the original sin came because, unfortunately, Adam didn't have the guts to stand up to his wife and say, "No, we're not eating that." It was Adam's fault.
I think Adam is a cuck. That's what we'd call.
Yeah. Well, his fault because God told him. See,
it was weak.
God didn't speak to Eve.
Yeah.
Yes, the serpent deceived Eve, right? But it says her husband was with her, and he knew what God said.
I didn't know it said that. I thought, okay, well, that's retarded.
Yeah.
Eve was
he was with her.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Do you
So what's the question? Do you believe the Religious Discrimination Act will lead to? Can you read the question out?
Do you believe the Religious Discrimination Act will lead to Sharia law?
No.
It's a fair question.
Yeah, it's a fair question, and I get this question a lot.
Okay.
No, because the Religious Discrimination Act gives people. It talks about because it interacts with all other kinds of Australian law as well. So the Religious Discrimination Act doesn't allow things like polygamy and child marriage and things like that because Australian law prohibits that. And nothing in the bill will lead to that. I'll tell you what will lead to Sharia law. Okay, what will lead to Sharia law is Christians not getting off their backsides and
not
not
vote.
going out and not being salt and light, and not evangelizing to Muslims, right? And at the same time, Islamic people have much higher birth rates than
Yes, well, they have 4 wives.
Put aside whether they have 4 wives, they
They
get married a lot
produce
sooner.
more.
Even when they come to Australia, they get married a lot sooner. They get married when they're 16. They make married as soon as they can when they're 18. By the time a woman is 30, she's probably had 4 or 5 kids. Okay.
How lucky.
And so what will lead to Sharia law is what may lead to it in London and in Europe, where demographics are changing such that you have a Muslim majority.
Yeah.
Once you start to get a Muslim majority, or you start to get a really big chunk of the population being Muslim, they've got voting rights, and
yes,
they can.
do.
And then they start getting their candidates into political parties. Okay, one of the reasons why same-sex marriage was legalized, and maybe 20 years ago it would have seemed unthinkable, because the left have gotten their candidates into political parties, whilst the conservative people have basically done nothing. Right?
Yeah, well,
think of a game. Think of a football game.
Right? The conservative group is retarded. Yeah, keep going.
If you have two teams, right? Team A and Team B playing a game. Team A is strong, fit, healthy athletes, skilled. Team B are retards. Okay, well, I shouldn't use that word. Team B are, let's say Team B are sickly, they're uncoordinated, they're weak, right?
Yeah.
If Team A don't show up for the game, who wins the game? The weak team wins.
Of course.
Okay. If Team A don't learn the rules of the game and Team B learn the rules backwards, who wins the game?
Well, the one who isn't playing backwards.
No, but what I'm saying, if the weak team learns the rules back to front,
yes,
they learn the rules really well. The strong team don't learn the rules.
Who's so the weak team still.
Exactly. So what's happened is the left have gotten involved in politics. They've gotten involved in political parties. They turn up to elections. They turn up to lobby. They lobby politicians. I know this because I get.
This is your work.
Well, I get their emails, and I've heard certain leaders from the left saying, "We know where the MPs have coffee in Canberra. We know where they go for dinner in the restaurants. We're going there every day and lobbying them for you." Right? Now, how many conservative Christians are doing that?
Probably
not that many.
Not many at all.
No, and not many conservative Christians. See, I'm trying to fight for religious freedom.
I know.
Then I want the church. To take that freedom and go out there and be salt and light and teach people why the Christian worldview makes sense.
But the Christians and conservatives are too chicken shit. They won't do it.
Exactly. Well, they can't complain about, will it turn into Sharia? If they're not willing to do something about it, then they can't complain. I'm sorry.
Well, this is why I made a video saying I am no longer a conservative, because we do not conserve shit.
Yeah. And you're doing something. I'm doing something. Okay. And what I'd like is everybody that might raise that question in a chat room, well, why don't you get out there and start being politically active and, fighting for your religious freedom, start talking about it. And the more people that talk about it, the more we raise the awareness of the issue and the less chance we have of that happening. I can tell you 100%, if Christians who are concerned about Sharia law stick their heads in the sand, okay, you've only got the result will be fairly clear. Okay. Now, let me be clear. Okay, all the Muslims that I've worked with, they're very clear in telling me that that's not what they want. And I'm not going to talk about conspiracies and all that. There are good and bad in every culture, and they're good and bad in every faith. Okay, but what I am telling you is, if one group doesn't become politically involved and the other group do, we can't blame them when the outcome favors them.
Yes, I understand. Okay? Yeah, that's true.
So hopefully that answers that question.
It does. Benjamin had a question about the COVID-19 virus. Do you think that the church? What are your thoughts basically on the churches not being able to meet up and congregate?
Oh, I'm very cynical about COVID-19. That's my problem. I'm struggling to get my head around why we've had such drastic lockdown.
Because they don't want
I've
it
heard
to.
people give me reasons. Sorry?
They don't want
Yeah,
to.
I've heard people. Sorry?
They don't want to contract it to another person. Like, if I cough in your face, you might
yeah,
get it. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that. I get that. But you know, we've had viruses that have had high death rates, and you know, it's like, so I'm struggling to comprehend the logic behind the lockdown. So, let me just can you clarify the question? What does he mean? What is he when he says, "What do I think about it?" Does he? I mean, I'm just trying to understand what he.
What does he think about the church being banned from meeting?
Well, depends what you mean by banned. Banned
Well,
from
we're not
meeting. I
allowed to
mean,
congregate.
yeah,
I can't go to church.
churches can still, churches can still congregate online.
Yes, it's not the same, but
now,
yes.
Now, I think that you could make an argument that that the church, if it should be allowed to, you know, I suppose their logic is that we can't guarantee there'll be social distancing, we can't guarantee that there'll be, you know, 4 square meters per person, blah blah blah. So they're going to treat the church just the way they treat everybody else. I think the church, if it wanted to make an argument that they would observe the social distancing laws and they would, you know, observe all the infection control laws, they should be able to make that case. So you know, if it's hard to argue for one group of people to be shut down and you know, another group of people not to be, if you know, but so I'm not trying to have a bet each way. I'm saying that if the church wants to prove that they can assist in combating the spread of the virus, then they need to go to the government and say, look, these are the measures we've taken. These are the this is the register. We're going to limit it to strictly 10 people because we've only got this much space. Blah blah blah, and they should be free to argue to the government why they should be allowed to continue to meet.
Yeah.
So I think that's the best way to answer that question.
That's fair. Svatnek asks, where do the Australian, I don't really know how this is relevant. Where do the Australian Aboriginals fit in? Some say they evolved here. Others say they came here. I don't think anyone reckons they evolved. They came from. They
came here. They came here. No, they.
Yeah, the land was joined. New Guinea
That's
and
right.
Australia.
They came here across, you know, the land bridge.
Yeah.
And that's why you look at morphologically. You look at Australian Aborigines; they look a lot more like Southern Indians and Sri Lankans than they do like Africans.
They're Melanesian.
Well, no, they don't look like like people from Fiji. People from Fiji have short curly hair. Sorry?
Are Fijians Melanesian?
Yes. Okay.
Oh. Well, the New Guinea people, the people from New Guinea look Melanesian as well. But
but the Aboriginals came from Southeast Asia, okay? And you look at them, they've got wavy hair.
And some of them are blonde hair and it goes black later.
Yeah, but purebred, you know, they've got wavy hair. They look a lot more like Southern Indians or Sri Lankans.
They do. They do.
You see? So that's because they both came from the same sort of rough area.
No, I think I agree. I don't know if this is actually a genuine question. I don't understand it. What's your answer on the appendix? What does that mean?
Oh, well,
I mean,
we used to think it's like junk DNA. We used to think that I think what he's saying is, the appendix has no purpose, so why we got created? Isn't it just an example of a vestigial organ? It was a leftover from. It's an evolutionary byproduct. Well, it's like the panda's thumb or junk DNA, where they said, 80% of the human genome has no function, okay, and so they called it junk, and they said that, that's our evolutionary byproduct. All right, but here's the problem. They said it was junk back then.
Yes.
But as they've studied it, they've found that more and more of it has function. See, they've assumed it's junk. See, just because we don't know what the purpose of the appendix is doesn't mean it doesn't have a purpose.
Oh, I see.
See?
What's like
Okay?
the male nipples? Why do men have nipples?
Yes, well, or the panda's thumb. It doesn't look like it could grasp things, okay? But it's very good for ripping shoots of bamboo off,
Yes.
okay? So we've got to be careful. Again, assumption is the enemy of all good logic, right? So
Yes.
just because you don't know the function of something doesn't mean there is no function.
That's true. We don't. Yeah. Maybe we just have no idea.
And we're starting to see that the appendix has a function in the lymphatic system. It holds, and it's almost like a storehouse of bacteria, for example, and it helps regulate gut bacteria. So there's some of the functions that people are starting to theorize about the appendix.
Yes. What's your favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme film?
What's my favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme film?
I haven't watched the movie in years.
It's funny he asked that because I've done many years of martial arts. That I've got a martial arts background. So my favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme film. Okay, I would have to say it's a cross between Kickboxer and Wrong Bet.
Ah!
Okay.
Yeah, so did many times this guy asked this question, and it's some of them I guess like
Bloodsport was alright. Bloodsport was alright, but I thought Bloodsport was boring after a little while. But I liked Kickboxer.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So anyway,
this can be the last question. I'll let you go because I feel like I'm holding you up. Is death the result of sin, or was there death and other organisms for billions of years before man ever existed?
Well, it depends what you mean by death. Okay, if you're talking about animal death, okay, I believe that animal death did exist because it talks about different kinds of animals in Genesis, the large-bodied animals, and also the
Leviathan.
So but it also talks about the behemoth, which are which are normally herbivores, and then it uses another word I think called the Havaim, okay, which is normally used for short-bodied animals, short-legged animals like carnivores. So I read Psalm 104 before, which talked about the prey that God gives gives the lions their prey. So I don't think that the Bible rules out animal death. God created carnivores to eat, because the second law of thermodynamics and food breakdown and all that, requires you're eating something and you can, I don't think there's anywhere in the Bible that says he created lions to eat grass, for example. In the future, in Revelation, it talks about that. Okay, the lion will lay down with the lamb.
Yes.
I believe death came to all men through the fall, yes, because Romans, I think it's Romans 7 or Romans 8 talks about, or is it Romans 5? I can't remember, but it talks about through one man, death came to all men. Okay, so it's contrasting Adam and Christ. So I believe that there was animal death before the fall. I believe that humans were created perfect and sinless. Okay, and if they had eaten of the tree of life, yes, they would have, continued to live. But because of the fall, because of their rebellion, so I believe the consequences, and we've got to remember, because were animals created in the image of God?
No, God created them because he's an artist.
That's right. No, but animals weren't given the image of God. Animals don't have a spirit in the same way we have a spirit. Animals can have feelings and soul.
They have a soul. They don't have a spirit. Or is it the other way around? Whatever it is, yeah.
No, they've got a soul, but they don't have a spirit.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, okay. They can have feelings. Your soul is your mind, your emotions, your will. But that's the spirit, the part of you that communes with God, where Christ can come in and where you can get born again.
Okay? They don't have that.
Animals don't have that. Animals don't get born again. All right. So,
no, unfortunately.
So I believe that sin that Christ saves us from is something that is a human problem. Okay. Animals live with the consequences of our sin because we burn forests and we destroyed the planet. We were supposed to subdue the earth, but sin, as in what leads to our death, that takes us to hell, is a human problem because humans were created in the image of God. Humans were given free will, okay, to choose to obey God or not to obey God. and we abused that free will, and sin was the consequence of that, and the fall was the consequence of that. So that's what I believe.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Well, I've really enjoyed this discussion, and I definitely have to have you back.
Yes.
You've been an amazing guest. Just
Thank
before you go, what do you think the word? I'm getting a little bit mocked in the chats because one time I used the word native to describe someone who was born in this country. Would you
born in what? Wait,
in this country? If someone is born and raised in this country, are they native to the country?
Well,
if they've been here for 3 generations or more.
I think you could make that case. I think you could make that case.
I think so too.
Yeah, because see, again, it depends how you define native. And just because someone chooses to define a native as, say, an Aboriginal, but see, here's the thing: the Aboriginals weren't originally inhabitants of this country; they came here as well.
I know this, and
so in a sense, we're all immigrants. Right? Okay, we're all immigrants, and so no, I think you could say that someone is native to this country, like your native tongue. My native tongue is English, not Greek.
Yeah, my native tongue started off Spanish, but became English, and now it's mine because it's just dominant.
Yeah, but I was born here, you see. So
same.
You know, and so you know, so I don't think, you know, and I don't think it's disrespectful to Aboriginals to say that, you know, I consider myself a native of Australia. You know, because, you know, to be Australian, you have to be white. No, you don't. I'm sorry. You know, my kids are half yellow and they're Australian. So there you go.
You married an Asian lady.
Yes,
good for you.
Yes. Okay.
Does Indigenous and Native mean the same thing?
Indigenous, well, Indigenous means yes, it does in a sense.
It does in a sense, yeah.
Yeah, it does in a sense, and Indigenous depends on how long what your time period, what time period you use to or how you define Indigenous. If you mean Indigenous is that arose in an area, the Aboriginals aren't Indigenous because they came here. You see? If you define Indigenous as the original inhabitants of a land, well, yes, they are Indigenous.
Of course.
Okay, because they are the original inhabitants of the land. So again, I'm not trying to split hairs, but one of the problems one of the reasons we have fights with people is we don't ask each other to what do we mean by that. We don't ask people to define their terms. And if we did that, you know, we would have much more dialogue.
I agree. Okay. Well, hopefully I'll run into you soon. Now that I'm in New South Wales, and I mean, I won't run into you anytime soon because I want to make sure everyone has self-isolated and all that kind of cool. But
yes, and you're in Wagga anyway.
Sorry? You're
in Wagga anyway, aren't you?
Well, yeah, I wish you hadn't said that out loud, but yes.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Kaboom! All right, edit that out. I'm sorry. Okay.
You're all right.
Okay.
Wow, you're not very wise for a Christian man of 50.
Yes. No. Well. Anyway.
It's all good. It's all good.
It's all good. So, but look, send me a link to this interview because I'll share it out.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Do you do events and stuff? If you ever do an event and you want someone to like introduce you on stage or something, or you want someone as a panelist, I'm here.
You're there. Okay. Yes, I do events.
Cool. That sounds great.
Yeah. Again, not doing events yet for
obvious reasons.
For obvious reasons.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yes, but look, we're Christians. We're siblings in Christ. We got to hook each other up.
No. What I'm saying is obvious. The obvious reason I'm talking about is COVID-19.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
so, I knew it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's good. So we'll yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Dia. I really enjoyed the chat, and thank your audience.
No worries.
Say hi to David Bryson. I haven't seen him for ages.
I don't know who he is. I think he just
he was one of your audience. He was in your audience.
No, I know who. No, sorry. I know who he is in terms of he just showed up in my audience, but he's not usually a regular watcher. He came to watch you. Yeah, so he must have.
Me. Okay.
Well, it must be because I shared this link everywhere, and then
Okay.
I presume that I like that guy. I know that dude. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Fantastic. All right, a pleasure.
All right. Cool. Well, I'll end the broadcast now and abuse you offline. So
yeah, and you can send people to that link, that YouTube link for the big deal. There's a lot of videos there on
yes. Hey guys. I have placed Con Kafataris's website in the description box below if you want to please subscribe to his channel. It has lots of really good information. By the way, before I go, I'll let you know that I tried to go onto your website, the one called something about marriage. Marriage is not just...
No, that's been hacked. That's been hacked into. It's
gone.
It gets hacked into a lot because so that's why I've asked people to go to your YouTube channel, to my YouTube channel, because that's still up. So we'll find a lot of little videos there, a lot of short videos. Pulling apart the woke stuff about marriage. And there's so I think I like it.
Okay, cool. Well, guys, that's in the description box below. Be sure to subscribe to his channel and to click on his whatever work he has. Have a look at it. It's stuff. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, dear. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. And broadcast.